Recently, I was visiting Spelman College campus in Atlanta, Georgia for family weekend. I had a great time and was able to visit the Museum of Fine Art, which is housed in the Camille Cosby Center. And they had this beautiful exhibition that they had just rolled out this semester, and it's called Threaded. And Threaded is an exhibition organized by and presented at the Spelman College Museum of Fine Art, and it presents a selection of contemporary artworks created by Black women working in textiles. This exhibit, it features works made with cotton, polyester, wool, sateen, corduroy, silk, chiffon, kente cloth, pima cloth, lace, velvet, and hand-dyed fabrics. In addition to textiles, you can encounter works adorned with cowrie shells, beads, brooches, and framed with wallpaper. Quilts sometimes emerge from the desire to keep loved ones warm, and sometimes these objects gather, hold, and bear witness to our stories. The works in Threaded are united by textile based materials and a starting place of love and creativity. The foundation of this Spelman Museum exhibition is 7 newly conserved quilts from the Bend, Alabama quilting community in the Spelman Museum permanent collection. These works are joined by another Bend quilt from the Clark Atlanta University Art Museum collection, and in addition to 10 prints. Threaded places quilts by G's Bend artists in conversation with works by contemporary Black women artists that integrate materials and techniques that extend beyond the traditional category of quilt. The textile-based objects in the exhibition are a testament to the spirits of women who have passed down their knowledge, skills, and fabrics through generations. I've always been fascinated with quilts because I know that quilts always tell a story. Sometimes they are the roadmap, they are directional. They have been for many centuries, and especially during slavery here in the United States. And I know that in my family, we've had quilts. I would see them in my great aunt's homes, and all of those quilts tell a story, and the stories that are told during the making of those quilts are just as dynamic. Now, National Geographic has an article on Did Quilts Hold Codes to the Underground Railroad? And it's by Sarah Ives, and I'm going to share it with you today. Two historians say African American slaves may have used a quilt code to navigate the Underground Railroad. Quilts with patterns named wagon wheel, tumbling blocks, and bear's paw appear to have contained secret messages that helped direct slaves to freedom, the pair claimed. Jacqueline Tobin and Raymond Dubard first poised the quilt code theory 6 years ago in their book, Hidden in Plain View, A Secret Story of Quilts and the Underground Railroad, which was published in 1998. In the book, the authors chronicled the oral testimony of Azella McDaniel, a descendant of slaves. McDaniel claims that her ancestors passed down the secret of the quilt code from one generation to the next. The code was a way to say something to a person in the presence of many others without the others knowing, said Dobard, a history professor at Howard University in Washington, D.C. It was a way of giving direction without saying, go northwest. The code. In a series of discussions with Tobin and Dobard, McDaniel described the code. A plantation seamstress would sew a sampler quilt containing different quilt patterns. Slaves would use the sampler to memorize the code. The seamstress then sewed 10 quilts, each composed of one of the code's patterns. The seamstress would hang the quilts in full view one at a time, allowing the slaves to reinforce their memory of the pattern and its associated meaning. When slaves made their escape, they used their memory of the quilts as a memory device to guide them safely along their journey, according to McDaniel. The historians believe the first quilt the seamstress would display had a wrench pattern. It meant gather your tools and get physically and mentally prepared to escape the plantation, Dobard said. The seamstress would then hang a quilt with a wagon wheel pattern. This pattern told slaves to pack their belongings because they were about to go on a long journey. Dobard said his favorite pattern was the bear's paw. A quilt, he believes, directed slaves to head north over the Appalachian Mountains. You were supposed to follow the literal footprints of the bear, Dobard said. Bears always go to water and berries and other natural food sources. The last quilt had a tumbling blocks pattern, which Dobard described as looking like a collection of boxes. This quilt was only displayed when certain conditions were right. If, for example, there was an Underground Railroad agent in the area, Dobard said it was an indication to pack up and go. Fact or myth? The quilt code theory has met with controversy since its publication. Quilt historians and Underground Railroad experts have questioned the study's methodology and the accuracy of its findings. Giles R. Wright, a New Jersey-based historian, points to a lack of corroborating evidence. Quilt codes are not mentioned in the 19th century slave narratives or 1930s oral testimonies of former slaves. Additionally, no original quilts remain. What I think they've done is they've taken a folklore and said it's historical fact, Wright said. They offer no evidence, no documentation in support of that argument. Dobart refutes the claim that his book lacks evidence, noting that he uses oral history and thus lacks written records. Who is going to write down what they did and what it meant? It might fall into the wrong hands, Dobart said. Addressing the lack of concrete evidence, Dobart emphasized the fragility of quilts. Consider the nature of quilts. A quilt was to be used, Dobart said. To expect a quilt that remained within the slave community to survive more than 100 years is asking a lot. Fact or myth? People agree that the idea of a quilt code is compelling. Bonnie Browning of the American Quilters Society in Kentucky said it makes a wonderful story. Fact or fiction, the slave code in the quilt? I believe that it is fact. I believe that the codes that were put in those quilts were for slaves and to get them to freedom. What do you think? Let me know in the comments section. Do you believe it is fact or fiction?
Everybody was in the same shoes. We didn't buy this because we didn't have nothing to buy nothing with. You, I just can't hardly tell you how life was back then. Because you wouldn't leave it no more. But we lived a hard life. We lived about a starvation life. But do you know, it was hard, but looked like people were happier then than it is now. Everybody you said was happy, looked like an enjoying life. But people got more now, and look like ain't nobody happy. I don't think I'll never forget how hard it was for me growing up. I'll never forget the things happening in our lives. You gather papers and plastic on your wall. That's all you had on your wall. That was your seed. Any kind of old books, any kind of old newspaper. You plastered the wall to keep the wind from coming in the house. And then sometimes you be sitting down looking at your wall and you'll see something on that paper. Take your pencil and you'll think, but that's something good. I could do something with this. And you put it together in your head and you'll do it. You'll do it. You know, people back then didn't have an education like y'all got today. But God loved them through wisdom and understanding. That'll win us, Lord. That's the way us live, through wisdom and understanding.
Artists featured in Threaded at the Spelman Museum are Louisiana Bendolph, Mary Lee Bendolph, Polly Bennett, Willie Ann Benning, Bisa Butler, Helen McBride Richer, Flora Moore, Ruth Petaway Mosley, Ebony G. Patterson, Loretta Pedway, Betty Bendolph, Seltzer, Phyllis Stevens, Sony Joy Thompson Ruffin, Qualisha Wood, and Billy Zangwa. Threaded is now open, and the museum is open and free to the public Wednesday through Saturday, 12 to 5 p.m. The exhibition will be on view at the Spelman Museum for the spring semester, and that is from now until May 24th, 2024. Threaded is curated by Liz Andrews, PhD, and Karen Comer Lowe, with Brandy Pettyjohn, PhD. All right, I hope you enjoyed the video. Continue watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you are not yet part of this team, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell to be notified when new videos are dropped. I enjoyed sharing this with you, and I hope that you had seen some beautiful quilts. It was gorgeous. And the museum, the building, the campus is dynamic and spectacular. I am Coach Sherry. Thank you so much for tuning in.